with the sequester, another, that 30% isn't just doctors. That's the whole Part B business. So anything you go to the doctor for, or for outpatient care, is gonna be cut. And they can't pass it on. They're gonna pass it on to the people who have private insurance, so that's gonna go
Well,
up.
I think at some point it collapses.
Yeah, it's
Because
unsustainable.
it's not sustainable. And even the exchanges they talk about setting up, that if you look at the economics of how that goes to work, it's not sustainable. The economics don't work.
And the other thing that with the healthcare, we also have 80% of our business is Medicaid. So with the states cutting back, we had major cuts there. I mean, there's not enough to care for people on a day-to-day basis. I mean, we need these guys back in business.
Yeah, well, absolutely, and as you know, the Obamacare also puts more people into Medicaid.
Mhm.
I mean, the state of Ohio, what was the figure expected to double?
Yeah,
You know.
Purpose, just to,
yeah.
purposely,
Right,
that's the
exactly.
mistake, and that's the thing, Joe.
That's what's
Guys like
sad.
you have to be involved in these activities at the grassroots level with the congressman when he's coming and you're running for election and doing their things. That's where guys like you have to get out and get public and start talking, because I don't know if you guys realize this, but how many, are a lot of you Republicans?
Never been.
You know, people think, you know, there's a group of people out there that, you know, it's real popular now to say independent, you know? But the problem is that people think you're, you know, because you say Republican, that you're in this one group of people that's, you know, wealthy, just walk around and, man, you take trips all the time you want to, you know, and you buy homes on the East Coast and West Coast and you do all this crazy stuff, you know? They think I own every car that sits in my parking lot, you know, I've got a couple hundred cars out there and these people think I own every one of them. And I hope you all don't think so. I finance those cars. You know, I pay a big interest to have those cars sitting out there, so hopefully Steve shows up and buys a new caddy from me, you know? But the fact is, this is the kind of stuff we gotta get talking about on a regular basis, not just at these exclusive meetings. We gotta get out where these people are and get them understanding that, at the hamburger, you know, down at Wendy's, when they're, you know, places like that.
I wanted to echo what Scott said earlier in the message. And, you know, I appreciate this opportunity and this roundtable to hear from you specifically in person what's going on. And I understand this is going on all over the country. And the problem we have right now is the message and how passionate we are about that message. And if you could take anything back, you know, when Scott was talking about the hand up or the hand out, you know, you've probably all seen the sign in Yellowstone Park that says, please don't feed the bears because they become dependent and then don't search for food themselves. What is the welfare system in part? That's what's happening there. And the other part of that is, you know, when you were talking about the other point that you were making, what was it? Geez, I just went brain dead. But the message getting back, if you could take any message back from us here, from me here in Ohio to our speaker, is that, you know, we put up with 4 years of Nancy Pelosi in our face every single day, pounding us. We're in a position now where we are the ones that should be in the public's face, pounding every day. And Nancy Pelosi is the minority leader. She needs to be out. Now, I know you need the cooperation of the media to get that done, but we need a passionate message, and I think
Yeah, but
that's...
I think too, in finding you're right, but you know, finding on the, you know, it just can't be Fox News. Everybody's not watching Fox
Right.
News. You know, Good Morning, you know, Fox and Friends, now everybody watches them in the morning time, you know? So you gotta get on ABC, NBC, and CBS, and the only way you're gonna do that is you're gonna have to find people who can relate to those folks that they'll like, and that they're gonna start adapting. But also, sometimes if you're dominating the airwaves, and with other resources, then they have to take notice and they have to start discussing from that perspective. And maybe that's the strategy that's not been explored either, is to take a dominant position, not a submissive position, you know, and that's just my take, and from talking to a lot of people, there is a huge misunderstanding And the president is being fairly successful at a class warfare type of thing.
Sad.
You know, I did a program for years out there at Mohican with those youth out there, and had a mentoring program I did with those young men. And the reason I understand it, I had a rough coming up, you know, and I was a troubled child, and I caused a lot of issues for a lot of people. So I know those kids, and I know their problems, I know their issues. But you know what I got out there with them, that was the one thing, those young men, I always inspired inside them to make sure they understood when they got out of that facility. And these are felon children, but they're felons. And the one thing I told them is, I said, guys, you don't need a handout from somebody. You only become beholden to those people. You know, our Bible tells us that, you know, you become beholden to somebody that gives you handouts. And we don't want to live in this Egypt, as far as you guys, I mean, right? I'd rather be in the promised land doing something than in this Egypt process that goes on.
Yeah.
And that's sort of what we're being molded into, and that's the problem that's going on right now that I see. And we're real people. I mean, Joe's, you know, he's a good guy. He don't want to do anything wrong to anybody down there, Good Shepherd. You know, you're not trying to, you know, take all the cash and run with it. I mean, if that was the case, you'd been out years ago, right?
Right.
So, you know, we need to get our message out, and somehow that has to start
And
happening.
you're absolutely right, the direction this country's on, where more people becoming dependent on government taxpayers, it's not sustainable.
Right.
And, you know, you can't grow this economy.
Not on welfare.
Yeah, you can't grow, well, the
Yeah.
government, transferring dollars to government is not growing the economy. It's private sector growth.
Well, not only that, we're not, as human beings, we weren't made to not create value, were we? I mean, that's not even what we're about. We create value, and we can't take people and breed laziness and let it be put into a perspective that, you know, somehow if I just keep giving you a welfare check or something, you know, you're gonna be okay. It's not okay, you know, and we were breaking loose of so much of that. Now you start seeing some of that is coming back in families, you know, that had broken out of welfare. Now you're starting to see where some families are getting locked into that again, all over again.
Did you
in
see
this
the
last-
president's executive order about a week ago?
Oh, yeah, giving it, yeah,
You don't have to work for welfare anymore.
yeah.
What is it?
Work requirements, he's waiting.
He did
See, the welfare reform.
That was a
done
huge part of the welfare.
Yeah,
reform.
good. President
Under Bill
Clinton.
Clinton in the nineties.
President Clinton put that in play, and now all of a sudden that's being
President-
waived
In
off.
order to
like-
get the welfare, they had to work.
Yeah, he was the
Yeah,
last
it's
been
been
Republican,
for
you
years.
understand.
Yeah,
This last week, that was,
A week ago, the president signed that, executive order that waived it.
You know, last week, or this week, 3 or 4 days ago, there was polls taken on a lot of things, likability and all of that. You know, the one thing that Romney really outpolled the president on was his ability to handle the economy. I don't know, but if I were running the campaign, somebody every day would be talking about the economy. I wouldn't let the Bain thing and all of that take the lead. Somebody has to get out there and talk about what's happening to the economy if we've got a shot
I think
at
you'll see more of that. The president is trying to do those type of things to distract.
Well,
because
sure he is.
You know, that can't run on his
Absolutely.
And I
record.
would too if I were him. With
But
his record.
Romney is, there is no message. And, you know, there are a couple of problems. Republicans are not herders, all right? They're the shepherd, they're not the, you know, the herd. They go in different directions. You go around this table and you try to get everybody to agree on something, good luck. All right? If you have a bunch of Democrats sitting around this table, they're all, you know, lockstep together. Right now, we're gonna lose the election. We may win the Senate, we may win the House, we're gonna lose the presidency. And if you can't win a presidency with the record that this guy that's in office has, but you're not gonna win it, I tell everything that's bad with Obama. I know everything that's bad with Obama, okay? What I wanna know is what are you gonna do to fix it?
This election is a referendum on the president's policies. I don't have any question about that. But I think you're right, though. The Republicans have to lay out their vision,
Yeah.
okay? And you know, when we talk about repeal Obamacare, because it's a disaster. And there's a couple things in Obamacare that we can accept, okay? But it's so bad, the economics don't work, it has to be thrown in the trash and start over. And what I've been saying, and I think, you know, everybody else on our side's been saying, there are two things that have to be done. First of all, we're not gonna pass a big monument bill, nobody's read, had a chance to read it, in the middle of the night. We're not gonna make that same mistake the Democrats did. But then we have to make sure that, number one, that the patient, physician relationships enhanced. It should be you working with your physician determining your healthcare, not a bureaucrat in Washington DC. And number two, policies that address the escalating costs. And there's some things there, tort reform, portability of insurance. I'm a big proponent of health savings accounts. I know how this ought to work. Health insurance isn't insurance anymore. It's prepaid, basically.
Right.
And so,
Health savings accounts work.
health savings accounts
When
work.
they first came into, to start, because we do books on some doctors, and it affected their revenue, because patients were asking the question, because they assume that that's their money, and they say, well, how much does that procedure cost?
Yeah.
Do I really need that? What could I do rather than that?
So it helps with
'Cause
defensive
they were
medicine, the
a-
whole thing.
They were a consumer of healthcare rather than assuming that everything was free, and they did work.
And the way I like to see the health savings accounts work is when you have your routine and preventative care, you're going for your annual or semi-annual checkups, you pay at, bill 100% on your health savings account. You don't pay a copay, you don't file anything, so you just do it for administration costs. Because it's unbelievable, you go to the doctor's office, they got people there doing nothing but paperwork. You know? And
There's more people there doing paperwork than there are doctors.
Well, that's why some of them go out of business,
Well-
and some have here. We had the one Brad, the pediatrician here in town that went out of business. And the reason he went out of business is he was trying to treat a certain group of people, and the poor guy, he didn't afford the people that he needed in there to get the Medicaid and the Medicare and all the other things that he was doing. He didn't have for the social services, the freebies that were out there, he didn't have the right people that knew how to go collect that cash quick enough. Poor guy's cash flow wasn't any good, he goes out of business. I mean,
This whole medical records automation have scared a lot of physicians. They've sold out to hospitals. There's not gonna be, doctors have changed. I talked to kids yesterday from Worcester, Ohio, that's gonna be the valedictorian next year. His dad's an anesthesiologist. He's going into dental care because he fears that there's not gonna be any money to pay doctors through Obamacare.
Oh, that's
So
true.
we're gonna have CE students doing surgery soon. And,
Well,
I mean,
there's another factor that I mentioned, nobody talks about.
I mean-
It'll be materially correct.
Another thing, think about, research and development. Look
Oh.
how far we've come in this country in our lifetime in medical, cardiac,
Oh, yeah.
cancer research and.
Well, just knee
Well, research
replacements.
does a lot. Who's gonna put that bill on their Obamacare? It doesn't happen. So, a lot of, yeah, go
You know, the
ahead.
governor, Romney, he came out with something that was pretty bold. He was talking about some not flat tax, but setting like 2 rates or something.
Well, yeah, that's
And then-
part of the discussion.
But I think-
15 and 20, or 10 and 25.
Yeah, I think what Lee is saying is, there's gotta be and even Scott, a simple message that can get through to people. You just rattled off 4 or 5 things that maybe some of us understand, because we have to deal with it in our business. But maybe you say, whatever you spend out of pocket, I don't know that if this is, is you write it off on your taxes. And if you don't itemize, maybe there's another way to do it, maybe it's a credit. But my point is that people have a lot of out of pocket, whether they're if they're not in the health savings account, even more out of pocket. That should be, you wanna cut taxes, that would be a good way to cut it. Okay, it might not make them a prudent buyer right off the bat, but you can't educate people in about 30 or 60 days or whatever here. You gotta come up with some bold things. And the message has to be rather simple. You're not gonna get the media. I mean, Scott, in fairness to the Republicans, they don't have that media covering that. And when they say something, it's usually parsed and said in a negative way. So it's hard to get through to certain groups of people. On the other hand, there's things that everybody understands. And the small business thing that I've been hearing here in your statistics, if you can come up with some anecdotal things out of that, this is a message I think that can get through. Because 80% of the business is small business, or 90, maybe even more than that, than the big business.
I think, on the whole spectrum of things, we're in July, get close to August, conventions are coming up, so this stuff starts gelling together, and historically, American people don't focus on the election until after Labor Day and later, so this, all comes together. But
I don't think that's true.
I'm talking about the masses. Masses of people, there's people out there that are focused and paying attention, but there's a lot of people out there that don't focus that much. We find it here on some of our targeting, what we call micro-targeting system.
Are they the voters?
we only call them, try to call them likely voters.
Okay.
Yeah. It's just that.
Well, that's a whole nother story. I mean, this voting thing, I mean, you don't know who's gonna be voting. I mean, the fact is, the way this is all set up now, and the way some of the Democrats are positioning and objecting